There's something almost magical about stepping back into a 1960s morning, when the day began not with notifications, but with the sound of a parent calling up the stairs and the clatter of a kettle coming to life. Back then, every child knew the routine. Beds made before breakfast, a quick wash, shoes polished, and no dawdling on the way out. These weren't negotiable tasks. They were simply how the household ran. And if you'd forgotten to complete one of them, you wouldn't hear the end of it. Even the walk to school had its own unspoken rules. Today, some of these expectations wouldn't just raise eyebrows, they'd spark arguments, think pieces, and national conversations. Yet for millions, these rules shaped the rhythm of childhood, guiding the day before it had even begun. To understand those childhood rules, you have to picture the world that shaped them. Britain in the 1960s was still carrying the echoes of the post-war years, when routine was more than habit, was security. Families lived with a sense of togetherness that stretched far beyond the front door. Neighbors knew one another, children played in shared spaces, and communities worked almost like extended families. With limited technology, days weren't filled with screens or instant communication. They were guided by clocks, calendars, and the gentle predictability of daily life. Parents weren't stricter, they were simply responding to a world that demanded resilience. Independence wasn't a luxury. It was something taught early, whether through walking to school, helping around the house, or managing small responsibilities. Many homes valued tidiness, punctuality, and respectful behavior not because they sought perfection, but because those traits made life smoother for everyone. It was a time when people relied on each other, when expectations were set by the community, and when children learned by doing rather than watching. This background explains why so many rules felt ordinary then, even though they would seem astonishing to us today. One of the most unforgettable rules of 1960s childhood was the curfew that needed no explanation. You could roam across fields, parks, or back alleys with your friends, but the moment a parent called your name, a street lamp flickered on, or the church bell chimed, you were expected to appear instantly. No debates, no delays. It was as if the entire neighborhood shared the same invisible timetable. Today, parents rely on messages and tracking apps to know where their children are, but back then, the community kept watch. Everyone knew everyone, and that trust guided the rhythm of every adventure. Visiting a friend's home in the 1960s came with an unspoken understanding: their house, their rules. If their mom expected shoes off at the door, elbows off the table, or quiet during mealtimes, you followed without hesitation. There was no negotiation, no whispering back to your friend about fairness. Parents trusted one another completely, knowing every household upheld similar values of courtesy and respect. It created a sense of consistency across the neighborhood, where adults helped shape children's behavior, and every child adapted as they entered any different home there. Chores weren't punishments in the 1960s. They were simply woven into everyday life. Children were expected to tidy their rooms, help fold laundry, carry groceries from the corner shop, and polish their shoes without waiting to be asked twice. Weekend errands often included sweeping the path or assisting with small household tasks that kept the family running smoothly. These routines didn't feel harsh at the time. They gave children a sense of responsibility and belonging. Today, many would call these expectations demanding, but back then, they were part of growing up. School in the 1960s carried its own set of rules, delivered with a level of precision that shaped the entire day. Children lined up outside classrooms in neat rows, speaking only when spoken to and keeping corridors calm enough to hear a pin drop. Uniforms were checked each morning, and punctuality was treated almost like a badge of honor. Lessons often included memorization, handwriting practice, and structured routines that gave every child a sense of order. While it felt strict at times, it also created pride knowing you were part of something organized and purposeful. Looking back, that structure became a foundation for adulthood, guiding how many approached work and responsibility. Looking back, some of the freedoms children had in the 1960s would make modern parents pause. Walking to school alone, exploring fields at the edge of town, or wandering through quiet lanes were adventures. Roads carried far less traffic, and most people knew their neighbors well enough to look out for one another's children. It wasn't seen as risky. It was simply the way communities worked. Children gained confidence by navigating and learning boundaries. Today, those same activities would spark concern, yet they once formed the backbone of childhood independence. In the 1960s, respect for adults wasn't a choice. It was a universal rule woven into daily life. A neighbor, shopkeeper, teacher, or bus conductor could remind you to mind your manners, and you accepted it without question. Parents encouraged this shared responsibility, trusting other adults to guide their children just as they would. It created a world where community voices mattered, and where children learned early how to behave respectfully outside the home. Today, such interventions would stir strong opinions, yet back then they were part of growing up. Looking back, it becomes clear that these rules weren't really about control at all. They were quiet lessons that shaped an entire generation. The curfews, the chores, the school routines, the respect for every adult in sight. They all worked together to build something deeper: independence, resilience, and an understanding of how to move through the world with courtesy. What felt ordinary then now reads like a blueprint for confidence. Children learned to solve problems on their own, to help without being asked, and to recognize their place within a wider community. And woven through all of it was a sort of magic: the freedom to explore, the trust placed in young shoulders, the sense that the whole neighborhood played a part in raising you. It created a childhood that felt both safe and adventurous. These memories didn't fade. They became part of how many people approach work, friendships, humor, and responsibility today. It's why so many look back with a mix of pride and affection. Those simple rules didn't just guide daily life. They built character in ways we often only appreciate years later. And understanding that helps us see how the world around us has changed. It's hard not to smile when comparing those childhood expectations to the world we know now. Today, smartphones guide family routines, safety-first thinking shapes every decision, and parenting comes with countless philosophies and debates. The rules of the 1960s might not survive 5 minutes in the modern world, but that doesn't make one era better than the other. They simply reflect different priorities and different rhythms of life. Yet as we think back to those early mornings, tidy rooms, and familiar voices calling us home, one truth remains clear: the rules may have changed, but the memories remain.